It's finally here. One of the builds that I have been most excited to get out this season. Introducing the Deathquake Barbarian. This is going to be a Deathblow build, but we're not focusing on Deathblow. We're focusing on Quakes, because this is the season of Quakes. This build hits hard, it hits fast, and I mean real fast, and it will push you through the pits very, very high. I currently have cleared 127, which I'll have that clear in the description of this video just so that we don't make that clear all too long. But I only had level 4 master working on a couple pieces of my gear and level 8 on a couple of the other ones because I was just throwing it together to see how it would work. Right now, we're going to hop into a run of a lower tier so you can see exactly what it looks like when you play this build and we don't add too much time onto this already long video. Check out the run.
Know that I have your back.
Before we dive into the skills, this is a later game build. That's why I didn't put it out right away. The Ring of Starless Sky is pretty much required for this build to be able to run properly. The Shroud of False Death makes it a lot easier to run. It does help. It is very difficult to run without those two uber uniques. So if you don't have those yet, that's just something to work towards. I have a couple other videos that will be in the description of builds that you can run to get yourself to this point. Those builds are very, very strong. They will clear any content that you want to do. So if you don't have those two yet, check out the description of the video for some other builds that are going to be great for you. For the skills, we're going to have two different directions that you can go with this. For now, I'm going to be going into Battle Frenzy. This is going to give us up to 18% increased damage. Frenzy, every single time that you use it, it's going to stack 3 times. When we get into the gameplay loop, I'll show you exactly how you can tell where the stacks are and how long you have on the stacks. If you are feeling squishy, you can take this out and you can put it into Combat Frenzy. That's going to give you 15% damage reduction when you have those 3 stacks. I'm going to leave it right into Battle Frenzy for now. We're going to go 1 point into Pressure Point, and then 3 points into Warpath. This is going to give us additional damage after we overpower. We're going to have a guaranteed source of overpower, and we'll cover that later on the skills. 3 points into Imposing Presence. This is going to give us additional maximum life. 3 points into Martial Vigor for some additional damage reduction against elites. We're going to be going 5 points into Rallying Cry. We need a lot of Fury generation. This gives us more Fury generation by putting more points into it, and we need a lot of Fury generation. That's why we're also going to be taking Tactical Rallying Cry. This is going to give us additional Fury generation and 20 Fury every single time that we use it. Anywhere that we can get Fury given to us, and Fury generation is going to be incredibly important for this build. We're actually going to skip Warcry, and we'll cover that when we get into the rune section and the gameplay section. It's one of the few builds where you can actually go without it and still have it on and procced 100% of the time. We're going to be doing 3 points into Booming Voice to increase the duration of our shouts. We're going to be doing 2 points into Raid Leader here. This will give us additional passive healing whenever our shouts are up. And our shouts will actually be active 100% of the time, which is also pretty cool. We're going to do 3 points into Guttural Yell. Your shout skills are also going to cause enemies to do less damage to you. For aggressive resistance here, aggressive resistance is bugged this season for now. We can only put 1 point in because it will not increase any farther than that. We're going to do 3 points into Prolific Fury. Remember, Fury generation is going to be key. Because of the gear that we're running with this, we are now running 90% increased Fury generation. It's pretty huge. 3 points into Pit Fighter. This will give us damage reduction and up to 12% increased damage to close enemies. We're going to get some additional increased critical strike chance here from No Mercy. And then we're also going to get Slaying Strikes. We're going to put 3 points here. This is going to give us 20% increased damage against healthy and injured enemies. Injured enemies is anything below 35% life. Healthy enemies are anything above 80% life. We're going to be taking Rupture. This is going to be our guaranteed source of overpower. Rupture is going to overpower every single time that we use it. The reason that we're taking this is because, one, when we overpower, we're going to be taking advantage of this additional 16% increased multiplicative damage. We're also going to be gaining 40% increased attack speed. This attack speed is going to be key to making sure that we have all of our buffs up at one time. When we get into the gameplay loop and you see how fast this build attacks, it is pretty insane. We're going to be taking Death Blow, but only 1 point. Death Blow is going to be our source of berserking. If Death Blow damages at least one enemy, we're going to be berserking. Now we don't have to worry about any other ability that's going to make us berserking. We have it up 100% of the time. Berserking grants you 25% increased damage and 15% movement speed. We're going to be going 1 point into Thick Skinned and 3 points into Counteroffensive. When you have Fortify over 50% of your maximum life, you're going to deal additional damage. We're going to be maxing out Call of the Ancients here, all the way up through Supreme Call of the Ancients. This is going to give us an additional source of damage, so it's a completely different multiplier. While Call of the Ancients is active, gain 20% increased attack speed and 30% increased damage. Now that is a completely separate modifier from something like Wrath of the Berserker, where you would just be increasing your berserking bonus damage up. So this is actually a really big source of damage for us. We're going to go 3 points into Heavy-Handed. While we're using a two-handed weapon, which we're going to be using two-handed weapons, we're going to get 24% increased critical strike damage. We're going to be going 3 points into Heavy Hitters. This is going to be a huge, huge source of damage for our Earthquakes. This is brand new this season. Your ultimate skills, Earthquakes and Dust Devils, are going to deal 315% more damage. We're going to be going 3 points into Duelist. We're going to be using Deathblow with the dual-wield weapons. It gives us a faster attack speed. Your attack speed is going to be increased by 12% while using a one-handed weapon. So that means our setup for Deathblow is going to be on our dual-wield weapons, not the mace or the slashing weapon. Invigorating Fury. We're going to be doing 3 points here. This is going to give us 12% of our maximum life back after we spend 100 Fury. We're going to attack so fast that the healing is very, very quick. 1 point into Unconstrained. This is going to give us additional damage bonus. And while we're below 65% life, we're always going to be Berserk, which will be Berserk anyway. And we're going to get 30% physical damage reduction. So this is going to be a really good source of damage reduction for us. For the Paragon board, and when you're doing Paragon boards this season, make sure that you find a build guide that only gives you enough points in order to fill out the entire board first, and then after that, you can go back and you can put in all of the additional nodes. If you look at the Mobalytics profile, this is for one of my other builds. The build guide that you will have in the description of this video, follow along with it there because that's going to be the best way for you to get the most updated information. I will have a regular version here with a regular Paragon board. That Paragon board generally will only have about 190 to 200 points spent. Then you go into the full Paragon version and this will have a full board for you. So I split them up so you know where to go first and then you can branch out from there. For the starter board, we're going to be running Wrath. This is very important because this is a huge source of fury generation. Every single time any of our skills critically hit, which we should be running about 100% increased critical strike chance with this build, we're going to get 3 fury. That 3 fury will be multiplied by all of the fury generation that you saw we are getting from our skill tree. We're also going to get an increased multiplicative damage bonus to a critical strike with this. In the next board, we're going to be going into Carnage. While berserking, critical strikes are going to increase your attack speed by up to 16%. We're also going to be running Challenger. This is going to be a great source of increased strength. Strength is going to be a huge modifier for earthquakes. Grants 100% bonus to all normal nodes within the range. So as we go through and we fill out the rest of our strength through this, we're going to get big bonuses to that. If you look right here, there it's giving 10 strength instead of the 5 strength that it normally does. In the next board, we're going to be running Decimator. Each time you make an enemy vulnerable, you're going to deal increased damage to them. Overpowering a vulnerable enemy is going to grant 20% additional increased damage. It'll be 40% total. We will have everything vulnerable, and Rupture will be a guaranteed overpower, so that means that we're going to have the vulnerable damage as well as the overpower damage for that 40% bonus. We're going to be using Ire inside of this board here. This is going to give us damage while berserking. It's also going to give us 10% reduced damage from elites while we're berserking. And as you saw with Deathblow, we're going to be berserking all of the time, so that's going to be up all the time. The reason that we're going to be running Ire is because we need our damage while berserking bonus to be at 450%. If we're at 450%, the Blood Rage node will give us 10% of our damage while berserking bonus as a multiplier. It's going to be up to 45%. So what that means is when you go into your stats right here and you scroll down to the very bottom, I have 449.2%. It's going to take 10% of that, which is 45% because it rounds up. That's going to be the maximum that you can get as a multiplier for that bonus. You do not have to go any higher than that. You don't really want to be under. If you do end up over, that's okay. It's still just additive damage, but you want to try and shoot for that sweet spot of the 450%. And when you go down into the glyph here, we're going to be running Rumble. Rumble was put into one of the highest strength boards that we have and that we can take advantage of. This is going to give a whopping 1,430% increase to your earthquake damage. Now, it is additive damage, but it is still a big number to add. We're also going to deal 10% increased damage to bosses and crowd control enemies for each active earthquake, up to 50%. With the way the gear is set up, we pretty much will have 10 earthquakes up at one time. We're going to get an increased multiplicative number to our earthquake damage as well. The next board is going to be our Force of Nature board. This is new. This is a big multiplier. Your earthquake damage is going to be increased by 40% of your damage versus close bonus, up to a maximum of 200%. This works exactly like the blood rage node that we just covered. You need to make sure that you have enough damage versus close and enough damage while berserking on your gear. Now we'll cover that when we get to the gear section because all of our gear is going to have different places that you're going to put it. Make sure that you max out on that. Inside of this board, we're going to be running ambidextrous. We're going to be running a one-handed weapon. This is going to give us an 8% increased damage while we're using a one-handed weapon. It's going to give us a damage multiplier as well. And any of the magic nodes within the radius are going to get up to a 227% increased damage. So the magic nodes, if you look right here, this is where we're getting some of our damage versus close bonus. If you don't have enough on your gear, you can always go and take things like these nodes right here. That'll give you that additional damage versus close. So that's the Paragon board. Let's take a look at the gear. Now remember, we are running a couple mythic uniques like I said before. For the helmet, we're going to be running the Ugly Bastard helmet. This is probably the strongest barbarian helmet out there. If you're feeling a little bit squishy and you want to, you can run the Harlequin's Crest. This will give you more damage, hands down. There's no way around it. But if you're going to be missing out on the Prolific Fury is Fury generation, and when you get into the gameplay loop of this video, you'll see exactly why that's incredibly important. This is best in slot for this build, so I would highly suggest running this helmet. For the chest piece, we're going to be running Shroud of False Death. This gives a +1 to all passives. Every single one of them out there. It gives us damage multipliers, it gives us defensive multipliers. It gives us everything. This is an incredibly strong chess piece. It also adds more resource generation to us and some big maximum life and all stats. Those are all very, very important. So running this is essential to this build. If you don't have it, you're going to have to change around the way that your skill points are working. We're taking advantage of running the Outburst and Tough as Nails combination here just by having that chess piece on. So without it, you have to add those skills in and take away from other things. The gloves, we're going to be running the Fists of Fate. For the pants, we're actually going to be running to Bolt's Will. This is definitely a change from a lot of the meta. A lot of the meta right now is running your Ariad's Bearing. The reason that we're running this is that we get 50 primary resources every single time we become unstoppable. We're going to be casting our Rallying Cry, which is going to make us unstoppable. Rallying Cry will give us 20 Fury. Then every single time we do that, we will also be getting 50 primary resources, which is Fury, as well from To Bolt's Will. We're getting basically a full Fury bar every single time that we become unstoppable. This is incredibly important for this build. It is a great source of damage reduction, as well as maximum life, and another source of all stats, where we're going to be getting more strength, and you want to stack a lot of strength. All stats is the same reason we're going to be running Yen's Blessing, as well as casting that skill. This is actually not the best Yen's Blessing right now. We need to get closer to 60%. The all stats is really what I'm looking for, and I need a little bit more resistances on this Yen's to make it perfect. The reason that we're running Yen's, Rallying Cry is going to be the only ability on our bar that Yen's can cast. Yen's cannot cast Rupture because Rupture is now a core skill, which we'll get to. It cannot cast Frenzy because it's a basic skill and it has no cooldown, and it will not cast ultimate skills. So that means that Rallying Cry will be cast by Yen's Blessing, and it can only occur once every 8 seconds. So every 8 seconds, we cast Rallying Cry. There's basically no downtime for your Rallying Cry. It's incredibly important running this combination here, and that will allow you to be unstoppable all the time, maintain your Fury generation, and take advantage of To Bolt's Will. You get the additional damage and you get the additional Fury from that combination. Then for the weapon, we're going to be running Earthquakes. This is a massive, massive multiplier. Now, we do not have Ground Stomp with this build, but that's okay. It's just going to be losing one of the Earthquakes sources that we have. We'll have all of the Earthquakes you possibly could need with this build. While standing in Earthquakes, and for 4 seconds afterwards, you're going to deal up to 120% increased damage. We still take advantage of that, even without Ground Stomp. Earthquakes are going to deal up to 120% increased damage also. We are gaining those buffs without having Ground Stomp on. Ground Stomp's just an additional source of Earthquakes. For the affixes, we're going to be running Strength, Max Life, Critical Strike damage. And for the tempers, this is where we get some of our damage versus close from. We're going to be running damage versus close and then Heavy Hitter. Heavy Hitter, like you saw, we're going to have a ton of stacks of it, and it's going to be huge, huge multipliers for it. The third blade. You cannot run this build at all without the third blade. What the third blade is going to do, it's going to take all of your weapon mastery skills and then turn them into core skills as well. That means that we're going to have Death Blow, and we're also going to have Steel Grasp as a core skill and a weapon mastery skill. Normally, weapon mastery skills have cooldowns. It removes the cooldown. We can now cast it as long as we have enough Fury. It adds a Fury cost to them. That's why having the Ring of Starless Sky, which we'll get to in a little bit, is so important for this build. The damage increases to Death Blow and to Steel Grasp are not important. Those are not your damage dealers. Death Blow is going to be a catalyst. For the other weapon, we're going to be running Executioner. Powers will spawn an Earthquake every 4 seconds that deals damage. Your Earthquake's damage is going to be increased by 15% for every 100 strength that you have. We are currently at 800% increase bonus. Rupture is going to overpower, so every 4 seconds, Rupture will create additional Earthquakes for us, but that gigantic multiplier at the very bottom is huge. For the affixes here, we're going to be running Strength, Max Life, Critical Strike damage. We're also going to get a source of close damage here, and then ranks to Heavy Hitter. For the two-handed slashing weapon, we're going to be running Incendiary Fissures. Your Earthquakes are going to deal up to 120% increased damage, and their damage is converted into fire. Now, the Ugly Bastard Helmet here, it takes all of the damage that we deal, and it converts it into fire damage, and then we take that fire damage, and we multiply it by up to 100% increased damage. That's where all of the damage is coming from with this helmet. So it's really, really big. For the affixes here, we're going to be running Strength, Max Life, Critical Strike damage. This is the other source of damage while berserking that we need. And then you're also going to be running Chance for Earthquakes to cast twice. Very important on this. This will give us a chance to cast our Earthquakes twice every single time that we spawn one, which will be once every second we're going to be spawning one. For the ring, we're going to be running Intercom. You deal 13% increased damage. You're going to triple that bonus if you're standing still for 3 seconds. If you watch the pit runs, we grab everything into a group and then we stand still. We're going to get this bonus every single time that we pull a big group together, so that's a 39% increased damage at maximum. For the affixes, we're going to be running Strength, Max Life, and either Critical Strike Chance, Attack Speed, or any of the other damage dealers, depending where you're at. You want to make sure that you're at least up to 100% increased Critical Strike Chance. Now, I'm almost there. When I go over that 100% Critical Strike Chance bonus, then I'm going to swap this out to something else. For the tempers, this is not the tempers that I want to be running. This is a ring from another build. Check the planner below to make sure that you're following along with the planner. The planner is absolutely 100% the best in slot. You want to be running Call of the Ancients, cooldown reduction, and damage to close here. For the other ring, we're going to be running the Ring of Starless Sky. Spending your primary resources reduces the cost of your skills and increases the damage by up to 50%. This is going to take the cost of Death Blow, cut it in half. This is why this is so important. And then it's also going to give us 50% increased multiplicative damage. For the amulet, we're going to be running Bull Kathos. Just like the Earthquake aspect, we actually don't need Leap to be on the bar in order to take advantage of this. While standing in an Earthquake, and for 4 seconds afterwards, you gain 30% increased damage reduction. The Earthquakes are also going to deal 90% increased damage. So every single time that we stand inside of the Earthquake, we're going to get 30% damage reduction. That's incredibly important because that's huge. For the affixes here, we're going to be running Strength, Attack Speed, and then it's your choice. I love Movement Speed, but you can run Max Life, you can run Critical Strike Damage, you can run whatever you want. It is that last one. But I put Movement Speed because it's very important to me when I'm running builds. For the tempers, we're going to be running Call of the Ancients cooldown, and then Movement Speed as well. For the occult gems, and I'll have the names listed inside of the planner because it doesn't show the name of it while you're inside of the gear here, we're going to be running Duststone. For each of your auras or hexes an enemy is affected by, they take 2% increased damage from you. We're also going to be running Friend of the Bog. You gain 8% primary core stats and 10% maximum life, and you're unhindered. You have to have 3 or more growth and decay witch powers equipped, and we'll talk about that in just a second when we get into the witch powers. I'll show you how they tie in. But that is a big source of getting us up to this amount of strength. Then we're also going to be running Hungering Void. Every 8 seconds, while we have an aura active, it's going to pull enemies in, and I love having pulls. It makes doing pit runs so much faster. So this is something that I choose to run. There are definitely other options out there for you, but this is the one that I like the most. In your armor, we're going to be running rubies. This is going to give you increased strength. Inside of the weapons, we're going to be doing emeralds for your critical strike damage. And for your runes, there are so many different combinations of runes. I tested a lot of different ones. This is the best one that I've found. I will list all of the different combinations inside of the planner if you don't have any of these runes. I understand that a lot of people are having some issues finding the runes they want. We're going to be running Pak Om. This is going to be where we get our Warcry from. Spending our primary resources going to cast Warcry. Because of how fast we attack, this is basically up 100% of the time. For the other one, we're going to be running Tam Tech. Every time we cast a core skill, we're going to get 25 offerings. So that means every 2 casts, we cast an Earthquake. So if you look at the tech rune, no matter how fast, no matter how many primary resources, no matter what you do, you can only cast Earthquakes once every 1 second. It has a 1 second cooldown. That's going to be where we get our sources from. We want to try and hit that 1 second mark every single time. For the witch powers, we're going to start with Piranado. This is going to be what we're going to be using. It has a pull. It's really, really great for grouping up monsters inside of your Earthquakes. We're going to be running Aura Specialization. That is the reason why you see this gigantic aura around me, because we're running that specialization. If you don't have it, there's definitely other options that you can get. There are fixes coming up very, very soon that are going to increase the altar drop rate, so you will be able to find these. We're going to be running Aura of Siphoning. That's what's going to be making our auras look this big, and we're getting an increased size to this. What Aura of Siphoning is going to be doing, you're going to do poison damage every second. Each time that you deal damage, you're going to heal for 1% of your maximum life. Hex of Whispers. This is actually incredibly broken right now. A single Hex of Whispers may only be transferred 6 times. So once it hits 6 enemies 6 different times, it's going to come back to you. It's going to cleanse all negative effects, and it's going to give you Fortify. Those negative effects, everything. When you go into the pits and you're fighting the boss or you're fighting Lilith, if you get hit by any of the echoes or anything of the mechanics that Lilith gives you, Hex of Whispers will remove the stacks of those bosses from you. It's pretty crazy. This basically makes it so you can stand still in any of the bosses and not die. We're going to be doing Shaken Soul. This is going to be a source of vulnerable damage to us. Now, Deathblow will make everything vulnerable. If you feel you're getting enough vulnerable damage out there, you can take off Shaken Soul and replace it with something else if you wanted to. We're also going to be doing Soul Harvest. Whenever you cast a skill with a cooldown, you're going to gain 1% primary core stats per surrounding enemies. Make sure when you're using this, the way that this is working right now, and I don't think it's working as intended, if you are around one enemy and you use a cooldown, it's going to give you 1% of your primary core stats. And if you keep on using any abilities with a cooldown, it will not give you any more than that 1%. It gets stuck on whatever the first one is. Every single time that you use a cooldown, it refreshes that buff, and it refreshes it at whatever you initially cast it at. So the best thing to do when you run into a pit run, you grab a whole big group of monsters as best you can, and then you cast it. If you can get yourself 30, 40, 50 stacks, you can maintain that throughout the rest of the run, and it's a lot of strength. It's a huge increase to yourself. For the expertise, we're going to be running a two-handed axe expertise. You do not have to have a two-handed axe equipped. This is just a 10% increased damage to vulnerable enemies that you'll gain. We are running a polearms right now, but you don't have to run a polearms for this build specifically. We're not running executioner. Remember, we're going to be running a dual wield setup for this, so you won't take advantage of that polearm. And then for the mercenaries, we're going to be running Subo. Running right here is definitely an option for you if you want, but right here has a shield slam and a charge that knocks everything all over the place. He was constantly knocking things outside of my earthquakes. So I started running Subo. You're going to get an increased movement speed. And you're also going to get a 25% increased multiplicative critical strike damage increase from Subo. It's really nice because you'll also be able to see where all of the monsters are in the pit, so you know if there's something in a room or if you can avoid that room. We are running right here. This is going to be running Bastion. If you want to get the attack speed from Variana, you absolutely can. When I first put the build together, it was a little bit more squishy than it is now that I've gotten some of my master working together. So I was running Bastion here. This is going to take 90% of the damage dealt for 5 seconds, and it's going to redirect it. You also gain Unstoppable when you cast this. That's the skills and everything you need to know about this. Let's go over the gameplay loop so you know exactly how to play it. So for your gameplay loop, you're going to start off by casting Rallying Cry. You want to maintain 3 stacks of Frenzy. Now what that looks like is whenever you're going to hit a target, there's going to be a green bar that's going to pop up above Frenzy. It will be your timer for Frenzy to run out. It'll also show you how many stacks of Frenzy you have right on your Frenzy bar. You're going to see the same exact thing for Rupture. There's going to be a green bar that's going to go down from right to left, and that will be your timer on Rupture. You want to try and maintain both of those throughout the entire time that you're fighting with Pack. Now, if you look right here, 5,299. When we cast a skill with a cooldown, we gain some strength. That is from your witch powers here, and you can see the buff right here. Every single time that our primary stats are increased, it's going to look like this right here, and every time that we cast something, it's going to constantly refresh that ability. And what we're going to do is that we're going to start with Rupture to get our attack speed up. Currently, our attack speed is sitting at 82%. When we cast Rupture, it's going to go up to 122%. Then, when we cast our Rupture, and then when we cast our Call of the Ancients, 142%. Now, there's 2 different channels, and you can cap out both these different channels. There's a whole bunch of guides out there on which channels are what. But when you do this, you basically are just going to start casting your abilities. If you look above Rupture and then above Frenzy, you can see the different cooldown here. So now, all you do is you make sure that you maintain your 3 stacks of Frenzy, and then you maintain your Rupture, and that's it. If you need to, you can always use Steel Grasp, and you can just spam your Steel Grasp if you want to pull a whole group of monsters in. It looks hilarious, but this is the build, and this is the run right here. You just are going to spam Deathblow, you pull everything into a group, you hide in the corner, and then you just spam Deathblow. Make sure that you use your Rallying Cry on cooldown, and this is what it looks like right here, just so you can see it without having any damage numbers on. The attack speed is absolutely insane and through the roof. I don't even see if you can see the character anymore. It's just a blur of attack speed. So you're just going to run that rotation as you go. Your Steel Grasp is a core skill, so you don't actually need to be anywhere near anything, and you don't have to worry about your cooldown. You can just constantly pull monsters to you. And now if you look, we're actually spawning earthquakes on the monsters that we hit. So as you run back and as you hit monsters, we're now casting earthquakes as you pull. That's the build. I am super excited to get it out to everybody. I will have different versions coming out as I learn and as I test and as I update some things. But if you want to see it live and you find something that's really great, stop by the live stream and theory craft with me. I love to hear from people when they're running the builds. It's a really great way for us to build the best build out there. I'm live every night. Stop by, say hi, theory craft with me. Catch you on the clip side.